Welcome to Logistics Business Conversations, where we talk with key spokespeople in the logistics industry about topical issues. Hosted by Peter MacLeod, editor of Logistics Business magazine.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world. My name's Peter MacLeod, and welcome to this latest edition of Logistics Business Conversations, brought to you today by Prologis UK, the developer, owner and manager of sustainable logistics facilities. Entitled Building Logistics Infrastructure for Tomorrow, we're going to be chatting about the changing requirements of warehouse occupiers and how developers like Prologis managed to rise to the challenge of not only providing their customers with what they need today, but also anticipating what they may need tomorrow and beyond. To help me, and I make no apology for the puns here, clear the landscape and shed light on the very important part the right infrastructure plays in logistics operations, I'm delighted to introduce to you my guest, Paul Weston, Regional Head at Prologis UK. Thanks for joining us, Paul, and welcome to Logistics Business Conversations.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. It's nice to be here, and maybe don't stick to comedy as a career.
Right, okay. I promise you no more puns for the rest of the podcast. So, Paul, let me kick off by saying that my inbox has been graced by quite a considerable amount of activity from Prologis UK recently. So please maybe tell me a little bit more about Prologis's activities in the UK and particularly some of its more recent doings.
Yeah, we've had a really busy period. And maybe I just sort of go a level up and talk about Prologis as a global business. We're the world's largest real estate investment trust based out of San Francisco. The business has been active in the UK since 1998, so we're a long-term sort of owner and investor in the UK. Globally, around about 3% of global GDP goes through our buildings. The portfolio is about 1.3 billion square feet and has a value approaching $250 billion. So it's a pretty big beast. Stepping down to the UK, about 2.5% of UK GDP goes through our buildings. Portfolio today is about 35 million square feet. Plus we have a land bank that can deliver around 20 million square feet. And on top of that, the value is around about $10 billion. So it's a pretty sizable business. We, as I said, been active in the UK for over 25 years and are very much seen as a market leader in this sector.
Some big numbers there, Paul. What about some of the actual projects you're getting stuck into now? I always associate you with Durft up in Daventry. Perhaps you could talk a little bit about what's going on up there at the moment.
Yeah, well, it's been a real, we often have feast or famine in real estate, and it's been a real feast opportunity for us at Durft after a couple of quiet years. I think the big news most people will have seen is that Marks and Spencer's Food have selected Durft for a 1.3 million square foot facility for their main national food hub, which we're really excited about. That building is going to be 100% electric, BREEAM outstanding. It's going to take the sector to the next level, which we're really pleased with. And with the likes of Marks and Spencer's, they chose us not just because having great locations and the offer that Durft brings in terms of that amazing multimodal side from rail, from road, access to ports and so on, but also as a partner of choice. They really like our approach. I touched on a few moments ago about us being a long-term owner and investor. The things we're able to do at Durft in terms of placemaking in our sector, in terms of sustainability, in terms of taking the sector on is massive, and we're really proud of that. But there's also another couple of deals that were signed as well. PO are going to be coming and taking a new facility at Durft, and then there's another building that's just about to start on site for another customer. Yeah, really exciting. We're also just leased the one speculative building we had available at Durft as well. So that's a 320,000 square foot building that's just gone. M&S are going to actually occupy that whilst we're building their new building with GXO running that contract. That's really exciting, but it's not just been Durft where we've been active this summer. We've actually got through or we've managed to lease getting close to 2 million square feet of other space as well within our portfolio. And that's some buildings which are second-hand. We call them second generation, but those buildings generally have been refurbished. But we found last year that the buildings that were fitted out, that already might have racking in or sprinklers or lighting and so on, were really appealing to our customers. So we've really carried on with that theme, and actually we've even put high-level fit out into our speculative buildings that we had available as well. So that's also seen a really good uptick in demand as well. So it's been a really busy summer.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to go over to Australia to watch the British Lions, and my team are saying I should go away more often. So we've had a good time. But, there's still a lot to do. It's a tough market out there. There are big headwinds for business in the UK at the moment that whether it be tariffs, whether it be some elements we talk about maybe a bit later in terms of electricity and getting power and so on. There's some challenges out there that we need to weather and keep pushing on.
Yeah, certainly want to drill down into those aspects later on. I love you quoting stuff in square feet. Always sounds so much bigger than in square meters.
I think our industry is a little bit messed up because, even though we went metric some time ago, we quote heights in meters, yard depths in meters, but we tend to quote the area in square feet. Clearly, if you're on the construction side, everything is square meters. So, it's just one of those.
And also for our listener who may not be from within the shores of the UK, or indeed familiar with the term DIRFT, it stands for Daventry International Rail Freight Terminal. And I think the key points of that acronym is D Daventry in the centre of the country, R rail. So it's a multimodal facility right in the heart of the UK's logistics, what can we call it, logistics valley, logistics triangle.
Yeah. So, DIRFT is UK's largest inland port. It's actually the second largest development project for Prologis in the world. It's already over 8,000 square feet. It's a massive park, and we have just built a new rail terminal so that we're able to take more trains. That will be going live in the not too distant future. We have a lorry park. We have a huge amount of open space, even a carol concert at DIRFT, which is quite something because it takes our placemaking to another standard. When you look at things like a five-a-side football pitch for people on the park to use, you look at the walkways and everything that goes with it. So DIRFT is, I'm going to say, maybe whether it's the Rolls-Royce of distribution parks and logistics parks in the UK, I don't know, but we're incredibly proud of it. And that ability to take 70 odd HGVs off the road onto one train is massive in terms of that move towards net zero. Big customers on the park are people like Tesco and Sainsbury's, who have their own rail terminals, and they're using rail a huge amount as well today. So it's a really important part in how the sector can play its role in reducing carbon as well.
Just to pick you up, you did say 8,000 square feet. I think it's a bit bigger than that,
Sorry,
isn't it?
I thought I said 8 million. Sorry, then I'm getting a little bit mixed up. But there's about 9,000 people employed at DIRFT. So right. It's a huge economic sort of growth pole for the UK. And we've just actually announced a further investment of around about £1 billion actually in what will be a DIRFT 4. We're just working at the early stages now of looking at the planning process there, but we will be looking to expand DIRFT by around 4.5 million square feet. So that's really exciting as we continue to build on the success we've had to date at DIRFT.
We've touched on it. It does help businesses, it does help your customers to reduce the amount of road vehicle miles because it's rail connected. Is this something that you can look at around other sites? Are you looking to try to get them near railheads, or indeed try and get railheads near your other sites?
So I think the rail terminals, there are only so many that really will work in the UK, and they have to be a decent amount of distance apart. So the beauty of something like DIRFT and other rail terminals is that you don't have to be on the park to use them if you want to use them. The reason DIRFT works well is not just about rail. That is something that's really a bonus. It's great for road as well. And fundamentally, 90% of freight is still moved on road. The challenge, I think, is making sure that places like DIRFT have got the future proofing in to be able to look after whether it's electric HGVs, whether it's going to be some form of hydrogen or whatever comes forward, whatever we're building, we have to have the thought in mind of what the future might look like. And that's really important to us in terms of how we approach things.
One of the big drives from the UK government, and obviously those around the world, with one or two notable exceptions, is to reduce the carbon footprint of industry. And it's fair to say logistics is quite a big consumer of carbon. Where are you as Prologis engaged at governmental level? And what sort of conversations are you having? The question I've had in my mind was, is this present government sort of understand logistics? Do they get get what we're all about?
I think it's a really interesting question. We as a sector, and I don't just mean real estate, I'm talking about logistics as a sector. We're part of that, helping provide infrastructure. And what we're trying to make sure government realise is that logistics is very much critical infrastructure. And it was funny, you touched on the shed word at the start. I really think as a sector, we have an image problem, and we've got to try and move away from words like sheds. These are advanced logistics buildings, I mean, in terms of what is on offer. When COVID struck, I think the sector had its moment in the sunlight when people realised just how important logistics was to the UK economy. Even today, around 232 billion of GVA comes out of the UK logistics sector. There's around about 2.7 million people employed in logistics, and that's around 7% of all people employed. The sector has a massive part to play, but we've really undersold it for many years. So the challenge is, how do we get government to realise what logistics can offer? And actually, it very much has to be an offer to government, not an ask. So actually, the sector doesn't need too much from government. What it can do, though, is offer growth, which is absolutely fundamental in getting our economy moving. It can offer amazing skills, and perhaps, I can touch on skills shortly in terms of what the sector can offer. But also it's that sustainability piece that you were just touching about earlier. We've been net zero in construction at Prologis since 2005. First and only logistics real estate business to be awarded a terracotta seal by the then Prince Charles, now King. Sustainability is at the heart of everything we do. And clearly when you're dealing with the big customers globally, UK nationals, you need to be right on your mettle in terms of sustainability, because that's taken really as a given today. So what the sector can certainly do is create buildings, and for us that means 100% electric buildings today. It means buildings that are actually EPC A+ rated, so actually beyond net zero. It means we can make sure we're putting solar on the roof so that we're helping manage the energy supply and creating energy for renewables. And that is a key offer the sector has to make to the UK. I'm not a great fan of seeing solar panels in farmers' fields, but they should all be on top of our buildings. And there are challenges, unfortunately, whether it be feed-in tariffs being so weak that it doesn't make the investment beyond what powers an ambient warehouse efficient, but also challenges in getting the feed-in into the grid as well. So, if there was something government could do with a magic wand, they could sort that out. And then just saying, do government get the sector? Well, when the sector aligns, I think it's a very powerful voice. You often hear stuff like the people like the British Retail Consortium. They have a massive voice. We should have a similar sort of voice for the amount of people that we employ, the opportunities and skills. Logistics is one of those few sectors where you can start on the shop floor and rise all the way through to C-suite level. In terms of job opportunities, I think on average, the sector pays £5,000 more than comparable jobs elsewhere. So there's real opportunity there. We have new skills come into the sector. As automation advances, as there's need for more engineering, IT skills, a lot of these buildings actually are headquarters offices as well. So there's a huge opportunity that the sector has to paint itself in a better light. I think certainly the government is getting that, but it is a continual work knocking on the door. Really, I was up at the Labour Party conference recently, and I sat on an UQWA, the UK Warehouse Association round table, and there was an MP, Mike Reeder, who is Northampton South. He's a real advocate now for the sector, and that's great. It wasn't easy to pin an MP who was an advocate, but actually, he speaks very eloquently about the opportunities the sector can give to the UK. There's a lady called Rachel Taylor, who's the MP up in North Warwickshire and Bedworth as well, and she's a great spokesperson for us in the sense of the sector. We took at Hams Hall, which is one of our parks, is in her constituency, and we took her around, and she was blown away. We've got JLR in a building doing a battery assembly plant. We've got high-end advanced manufacturing and logistics businesses working out there. And it's how we get the public to appreciate this sector has so much to offer. We tried to host a careers fair at Durft about 3 years ago, and we really struggled to get the careers leads in schools to engage. We actually had to basically almost drag them to the park and meet some of our customers and take them round there to show the children in their schools could have a real opportunity getting a career in logistics. And
Yeah. That's really important.
We've had 2 more events since then, and we're getting 120 kids each time. So once you get that momentum, we really need to build on it.
That's so important. When we were at equivalent age, deciding what our careers should be, I don't think any of us really thought logistics was, or we probably didn't know what it was a viable career. Well, Paul, that was a pretty comprehensive answer, and you covered a lot of topics. So I want to maybe pick out a few of those.
Yeah.
And obviously, apologies for using the word shed. As a professional logistics editor, I only inserted that as a vehicle to use as a pun. But actually, when you look at the structure of in particular, for example, a BREEAM outstanding rated warehouse such as those that you're putting up at the moment, the infrastructure is quite extraordinary. So what are the kind of elements that would go towards making it BREEAM outstanding?
So there's a number of elements that go into it, but fundamentally, it's the jigsaw of parts that come together. Look, you can't hide away from the fact these buildings use concrete, they use steel, and a lot of steel in the UK. So one job we have to do is how we mitigate the carbon within the fabric of the building. The beauty of these buildings is that they're recyclable and actually demountable in the main, and we've worked very hard on our kit of parts to make sure that is possible. The next stage is really to look at the operation of those buildings and how do you make them as efficient as possible in terms of carbon. So I touched earlier on 100% electricity. Now, we do have the ability to put gas into those buildings, but we stop it at the edge of the site because I think we're moving to a world where that is not going to be necessary. It's about solar on roofs as well, and having enough solar that you can actually manage the running of the building with that rooftop solar without creating much more energy, because I touched earlier on the issue of you can't, it's very hard to feed it in elsewhere. I think that will get better, but we're not there at the moment. And then there's other things like, using grey water, making sure that when we're looking at these facilities, we're absolutely on point in terms of wellness. So we spent a lot of time, we call it park life, but what we're trying to do is bring placemaking into the sector. So this is about creating not just the best spaces within our building. So it might be gyms, it might be outdoor spaces. I mean, if you go to DERF, you'll see roof terraces, you'll see spaces where staff can actually go and have a break. Then you move into other spaces on the park that actually need to work not just for the people on the park, but for the wider community as well. So how do we, for example, we've got a 5-a-side football pitch at Durft, and there's a barbecue area. There's footpaths. There's 100 acres of farmland with rare breed sheep. It's trying to make it work harder and make it work harder in a positive way. So that's what we're very, very much about. And we take some of those lessons that we've learned, whether it be at Durft, but at other parks. And if it went well, let's repeat it. If it didn't go so well, okay, we've learned a lesson, let's move on. And I think one of the key pieces and attributes about Prologis is about our culture, and that culture of innovation, that culture of, we talk about 1%ers. And I mean, this isn't new. David Brailsford was talking about this in terms of Olympic cycling, but it's how do you do those little things that little bit better each time? And then you're raising the bar, not only on the sector, but on the industry, and also what it offers back to UK PLC as well.
So whilst we're talking about skills, labour, people, logistics always was and always will be a people industry as much as it's a technological leader as well. What else are you doing to attract people to the site? Not only through the sort of the facilities, but the actual sort of quality of the jobs as well.
So maybe there's a couple of them. One about how do you get to the site.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't forget that the best logistics parks tend to be on the edge of town. Clearly, London has decent public transport, but once you get out of there, it becomes more challenging. So unless you can drive to the park. So we have been partnering with a business called Mobility Ways, I think for over 15 years now, maybe even longer. And that offers a lift sharing service. And it's not just for people in one building, it's for people across the park. And I'm going to say it's a bit like a lift dating app.
Right. It's sort of like a ride sharing app.
Yeah. And it works out what's a fair contribution to make for that lift. So it pairs people who are maybe on similar shift patterns in certain, on the same park, but in different buildings, for example. We also are working with Zelo. I'm going to probably call that an Uber for buses. But actually, we've partnered with Sainsbury's and others, and we're about to do this actually down in Hemel Hempstead as well, where we've got some other, another part with big ownerships. And again, it's basically looking at where staff come from and creating a route that can pick those people up and bring them to the park. So some of that we will help subsidise because, again, we think it's the right thing to do. Some of it is actually customers then taking that on because it works for them. That's how they can access more staff and take their catchment out that bit further. Just in terms of skills and so on that you touched on, definitely skills are changing. We offer something called the Prologis Warehouse and Logistics Training Program. It wasn't an obligation. Again, we thought it was the right thing to do. We're working with a non-profit called Goodwill Solutions to deliver basic entry-level training for people who may never have worked in the sector before or have come from outside the sector, wanting to change careers, maybe ex-armed forces or what have you. So that's one line. Clearly, the sector itself is evolving. I was with a couple of our large customers a couple of weeks ago. We have a customer advisory board where we actually learn from them, which is really helpful. And it was really interesting to hear that they're actually running their own driver programs and what have you to make sure they're getting the right sort of expertise. But then we have more technical jobs coming into the sector as well. As automation grows, as we see more AI and that need for that technical interaction between robots, cobots, people, however you look at that is also changing the nature of employment. And I touched earlier on the fact that actually a lot of the buildings have really high office content and really good quality office content in them and office spaces. And when you look at rents, they're considerably cheaper than town centre locations. So you're also seeing those sort of roles grow as well. We've been running an employee survey, since about 2006. We run it every 4 years. And it's been really interesting to see just even the density of people within our buildings has fluctuated quite a lot over the 16, 20 years we've been running that survey. So today I think we're about one person per 97 square meters. Not that long ago we were one per 79, but it does fluctuate, and the roles have changed as well. Those roles are becoming, I think 91% of those roles are full-time, which is great. We're seeing more women coming into the sector. I think it grew from 34% to 39% between surveys. And the nature of those roles are changing as well. We are seeing more engineering, more skilled roles coming in as well. So, and I go back to the fact it's one of the few sectors where you can enter right at the shop floor, as it were, and get all the way up to C-suite. It's remarkable that career progression in the sector. We just need to spell it better.
I second that. We've seen that happen so often. I'm going to use that as a bit of a segue. We're talking about people. So here's the scenario. You're planning for the future as well as you are for today. You need to know what your customers need to get their businesses running from day one, but you also need to anticipate what their needs are going to be in the future. So that could be their operational needs. It could be around the type of automation they install, could be around the sort of levels of labour that they have on site, and therefore you need to plan in the right amount of parking spaces. I mean, where do you start with all of that, Paul?
Well, it's a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think, I touched on the fact we, as a business, 3% of global GDP goes through our buildings around the world. So we get to see a lot of trends, and we get to see them early. I think our CEO, Hamid, commented recently we have a global conference called Groundbreakers that you can access online if you want to have a bit of insight into sort of global trends and so on. But it used to be location. Now it's location, energy.
Yeah.
So that energy conundrum is really, one that is facing a lot of people. And we can touch on that in a moment about the UK, but I think we commissioned a Harris poll recently of 1,800 sort of leaders in logistics. And I think something like 89% have said that they had issues with power in the past 12 months. And 83% see that as very much a challenge going forward. So trying to provide for power and energy is absolutely critical. We have a Victorian energy grid in the UK. yes, we are finally getting around to trying to sort that out, but there are some real challenges there. There are some opportunities as well. And we touched on solar, but in terms of, even doing microgrids for parks is going to start to be more prevalent. We're actually doing one of those in the Netherlands at the moment, just taking pretty much everything off grid and providing our own. We need to have our certainly heads up as to what's happening there. And that's, even automation is a massive use of power, but just think what EV will do as well. So definitely that is something we have to take into account. Heights of building, I think, is really important. Typically, the higher it is, the more flexibility another user will have in time. We see a lot of people putting in 2-3-story mezzanines today. It's a really efficient way of working, or large automation fit outs as well. Thinking about doors, you can never have enough doors, whether the bigger buildings that are cross-docked, two-sided, certainly you're doing well on the doors there, but even those smaller single-sided buildings as well, making sure you've got the optimum number of doors. Vehicle circulation space as well, absolutely key. Things like employee parking is more difficult because that tends to be controlled by the local municipality, the planning authority, so they tend to have maximum parking standards. But, as a responsible long-term park owner, we want to make sure we've got the ability to get people to park through public transport. I touched on Zelo, I touched on mobility ways. It's trying to factor in those. In Northamptonshire, really interesting, we've suddenly got loads of those little scooters, people coming to work on the scooters you can hire. So we're now thinking, well, actually, how do we find somewhere to put those so then they can be centrally collected and everything else? So the whole picture is evolving continually, and it's a mixture of, what are we seeing on the ground? What are our customers telling us? What are we seeing around the world? And how do we shape a UK response to that? It's a great challenge.
So as an editor of a magazine that has more than a keen eye on what's happening inside the four walls of a warehouse, how do you ensure that the interior of the building suits the needs of the future occupier?
So big one is floor loading, and I'm talking, this is around the workings of the building. So floor loading is absolutely key, particularly when you come to look at mezzanines as well. We touched on height. Sprinklers. We are seeing really long order times for sprinklers at the moment. So, 6 months plus. So I think we fitted out some of our speculative buildings and put the sprinklers in, because it made sense, and actually those buildings have leased up really quickly, because I think it also helps end users with CapEx as well. And then on the office space, it's around, welfare, wellness, well-being, and creating areas where people can go and have some decent break time. The other thing I will say is toilets. Interviewing people within buildings, and often, this sounds really basic, but they'll say, look, I've only got a certain window to get to the toilet. I need there to be enough toilets. And so we put in more toilets than any other developer. And we do that because that's what our customers were asking for. And actually their employees were asking for. So it's important to, even the simple things we need to get right.
That certainly sounds like you have your ear to the ground and are acting upon it. There's a trend, obviously, in warehousing to maximise the volumetric space. The price per square metre, those figures never seem to come down. So we're seeing a lot of deployment of very optimized storage systems. How do you help your customers accommodate those, for example? They want to go right up to the eaves.
Yeah, so good news is Prologis has a business called Essentials, Operating Essentials, and we can actually work with the racking companies and everybody else to be able to fit out a building for our customers. So take that pain away. So that's definitely an offer if people want to take that up. And that doesn't have to be in our own buildings as well. We can offer that service elsewhere. But very much for mezzanines, it's about floor loadings. It's about being able to put pads down if you need them. It's about being able to design them effectively. It's about having enough height. But also, it's about light into that building as well. One of the big drivers behind us getting to EPC A plus and BREEAM outstanding is to have enough roof lights. So clearly you want to have the ability to get light into that building as well. I touched on sprinkler design. Having your sprinkler design as flexible as possible is really key as well if you want to move around within that building over time. So yeah, that's just a couple of areas that we're thinking about. And then again, power. If you are going to automate, you need power, and that is a real challenge.
Yeah, it's I can understand that, and these systems are just using more and more power. I suppose the more automated it becomes. So I was going to say, Paul, as we're coming towards the end of this edition of Logistics Business Conversations, I wonder if you could sort of summarise what are the fundamental areas that warehouse developers such as yourselves focus on to ensure that the building you're putting up for today will remain operational for the maximum possible time.
Clearly, you've got the physical characteristics of that building, in terms of height, in terms of layout, in terms of number of doors, office content, so on. For us, we've got buildings now, and Prologis has been in the UK since 98. We have some quite old buildings within our portfolio. But when they come back to us, we're refurbishing them. And the quality of the original build, coupled with the quality of the refurb, means back to being EPCA rated, great quality buildings and so on. So go for a developer that is also an investor and builds for the long term, because that's the way of getting the best and most flexible buildings. But also look at the outsides as well. It's really important to think about the environment that we're creating, not just in terms of how that can help the staff within buildings. One of the most important thing I think to our customers is attracting and retaining staff. So you want to have the best facilities on the best parks. And also, how does that interact with the local community? We need to move away from being quite faceless buildings, a faceless sector, and really sort of showing how the sector can do its bit. So making our external spaces work better and work for the wider community is really important to us as well.
Yeah, and I guess sort of geography as well, in terms of getting it located as close as you can to the major road networks, rail networks, and getting goods in and out as efficiently as possible down the UK's networks.
Absolutely. Certainly for the larger buildings, absolutely. But let's not forget about last mile and urban logistics as well. There is a huge sort of emerging business there as well, and that is also built on convenience and people wanting their stuff very quickly, but also actually on sustainability. If you're in London, we've got a customer who are in a 10,000 square foot building in Park Royal delivering everything by electric vehicles straight to end users. So there are real opportunities within cities as well in that urban piece to get that right and to create a very sustainable offer as well.
That whole urban piece, last mile delivery side, I feel is a podcast all on its own. So maybe
it will be, yeah.
We'll save that one for another time. Well, Paul, it's been a great pleasure speaking with you today about this subject. It's got relevance for everyone working in logistics, obviously, from the slab upwards. Thanks for explaining so succinctly the part Prologis plays, and also to Prologis themselves for supporting this edition of Logistics Business Conversations. And thanks to you, the listener, for joining us today. Wherever you get your podcasts from, please subscribe to Logistics Business Conversations to make sure the next edition is delivered straight to you as soon as it's released. Until then, it's goodbye from Paul.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me, Peter MacLeod. Goodbye.